Good evening and welcome to Italian Impact Weekly. I am your host, Stefano Mancini, and I am very excited to have a wonderful guest in the studio today, which is everyone who's been tuning into the show knows that sometimes you get lucky and you get the guest in the studio, and other times you're on the phone. And for the record, while I appreciate the phone guests, I do love it in person because I can look at them and stare at them and give them fix and smile and laugh, and it's just a wonderful conversation. So I have a wonderful filmmaker, an international documentarian who's done a lot of films. In fact, we just got done watching one of his films, which we're going to talk about. But he is just an incredible person. He's been around. He's been at RMU for a while. He has traveled all over the world showing his films. They are very well received. He is an award winner from many film festivals, and I want to welcome to the studio Luca Guardabascio. Luca, come va?
Yay! Exciting. Molto bene, very well. Molto bene, very well.
I do try to definitely not put the audience to sleep in the first few minutes. Otherwise, we're done here. So, Luca, welcome again. And you just got to Pittsburgh yesterday, but obviously you've been here at RMU before.
I was here 2011 as a Rooney visiting scholar, and I was able to have a part-time position here in film study and production. So, we did something like a mockumentary that was called Zek Echo, a poet that never exists. And we invent, and the kids just have fun. I have a class, I think it was 2014. I was part-time for a period here. It was very, very nice. It was my home. I was at the Rooney House first here, and then on the first house nearby there for the 2015, 16, and 17, if I remember.
So not too long ago. Now, you said home. Let's kind of back up. Now, where are you originally from? You have a funny accent, Luca.
Yeah, like all the Italian, funny accent. I come from near Salerno, Eboli. Cristo si è fermato ad Eboli. Jesus Christ stopped in Eboli. It's a book by Carlo Levi. And I'm very proud of my roots. But I live in Rome because, I'm a filmmaker, I'm an author. So yes, you have to be in Rome. But my son is growing in Eboli, my hometown, and he's happy. Maybe he's more happy than in Rome. So my accent, il mio accento, come from there, viene da lì. We are not just singing a Napolitan song, but we are, like you say, good people with a strange accent.
Well, it's funny because also, it's not from New York. Where's he from? No, Luca, first of all, again, welcome. And now, the theme of the show is to talk about Italian culture. And obviously, I don't need to ask you, so what do you think of Italian culture? You're from Italy. But you've traveled all over the world. And I want to talk because, you've been making films for a long time. And I always like to start at the beginning. When you were younger, is that what you envisioned yourself doing?
Yes, when I was young, I published my first book that I was 7 years old, and there was fairy tale book. So my teacher say, you write so well. You are like an enfant prodige. That is a French word, like to say you are a brilliant kid. Let's publish this thing. And so I have always my vision that I want to tell story. At that time, I don't know what's director meaning. And so I start to write and I start to act. And that bring me in when I was just 12. My father and mother, they bought me a video camera for my first communion, and I start to make a movie. And the funny thing that some people in the village, and the village close by me, they make a copy of my movie. And one day I was in a market and I find my own movie, pirate copy, I don't know how to say, that was standing on the market, and they were trying to sell me my own movie,
You said, boy, that name looks familiar.
Yeah.
Who is that guy?
It's not you. I say, yes, it's me.
Now, were you acting or just directing and producing?
At that time, I was acting, and then I went to Rome University, La Sapienza, and then I have 2 master degree, one in theater, one in cinema, and I understood that I could be a director. So sometimes I produce a movie too, but it's always low budget, independent.
Now, as I say, it sounds like you never thought twice. You said, you know what, I'm going into film, I'm going into stories, and that was it. Now, you went to school, right? Like, I know the Italian education system is a little different than America, but the equivalent of high school, and then you went right into college and you just studied film.
Yeah, there was two options. I went to university, like you say, college, but I was studying fine arts, so literature, philosophy, history. But the main topic was cinema, theater, dance, everything fine arts. So everything that is matched with cinema. In fact, the first years that I was at Robert Morris University, my class was Italian history through Italian cinema, because I was able to study that. And then my MFA was just cinema one, all cinema. I was with seminar with Peter Bogdanovich, Stanley Donen, and Bernardo Bertolucci, so the big name. And then another one was theater, and I did these two MFA, master degree, that helped me a lot, even to meet people, have my own network.
Now, you started very young filming on your own. What would you consider your first kind of, this was my real first piece, I'll call it professional piece? Because I know you say you do low budget, but your films aren't bad in the sense that I've seen low budget films and you say, oh boy, but you don't look like you have low budget films. So, I mean, what would you consider your first piece? You say, this is my first professional piece.
My first professional piece, it's happened in 1994. And there was a short movie, because when I saw Pulp Fiction by Quentin Tarantino, I was shocked. And I say, I want to write a story like this. Not a pulp story, but, it's easy to talk about stuff, things.
Right.
And I wrote a short movie that was called Cult. And with these two killers that have to shoot a guy in a hotel, but they miss the room because the number 9 twist, they become number 6, so they shoot the wrong person. So, and that is my first one, I think, that I produced with my friend Daniele Natali, is an actor, and we spent money, and we went to the first festival, and that was a starting for me, because it was the first professional. I say that I'm independent, but when this is important, education is important, when history, cinema, mathematics, geography, and everything, even AI. I'm studying AI a lot. You can build your story. You are free. You are free to have the director's cut. This is the main thing for me, because I can speak even with producer on the same level. But this happens when you study a lot, and I always study, always, every day. So maybe I have not enough money, but I think I can build the story because I have that kind of education. I don't know if it's clear.
No, it's perfectly clear. In fact, I'll tell you what's funny is I've watched a lot of films, and I'm sure you have, where they've spent a ton of money, but there's no story. There's nothing. It's effects, or they've got a big name, and you say, but this stinks. And then you can watch someone that doesn't have to spend a lot of money, but it is, to me, it is all about the story. I mean, I watch, it's just like when I listen to music, and I tell people, sometimes I like a song because of the lyrics. It's not necessarily the beat. So in a film, I would say it's not necessarily the graphics. It's not necessarily who the actor or actress is. It's, to me, that's the most important thing. You can spend a lot of money, but there's nothing there.
The story comes first. The story is the first intuition. The first idea is the first that is an illumination. And I grew up, even if I'm a son of the 80s, because I was born 1975, my illumination was from great story that was in TV from the 60s, that was Twilight Zone, so Rod Serling and Alfred Hitchcock. That was the thing. They said, this is the story that has sometimes science fiction, sometimes social story, sometimes thriller, but I think I grew a lot watching that to write good story. And on set, when you are so independent, you have to think how I have to do something. So how I have to do the close-up, how I have to put the light. So I'm into it since 1994, when I become a little bit more professional. And I say, how I can do this one and don't betray my story. And this is fundamental. It's a continued training on set.
Now let me ask you, because you're like me. I'm born in the early 70s. I'm actually older than you, Luca. So.
I look older, but
But, it's funny because I grew up on a lot of the same things. I grew up, I remember watching, at the time, even then they were reruns. You watch something from the 60s, in the 70s, early 80s, you was, well, this is 10, 15, 20 years old, but you're still watching it. And then you watch movies, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, they come up with these, in the late 70s and the 80s, they came up with stories. Again, these movies they rivet you. Do you think there is a decline in the storytelling because the technology now is almost overpowering the movies?
For this, education is important again. I'm studying AI, artificial intelligence, whatever, because there is nothing that you can do. You cannot stop the progress, but just if you have the ability and the capacity and the brain to handle that thing, the story come good. But if you just say, drop this story and write whatever, a gay that love another person, or, they just make something weird that they say, this is not the story that I want, that there can be even something that drive you nuts, offend people. So I don't like when people approach some new technology and they don't know nothing. I want to say one thing, Stephen King. Everybody thinks that Stephen King it's an horror author. It's not. Stephen King is a writer that writes story about growing up. So if you take movie or book like The Body, Stand By Me by Rob Reiner, it's a movie that talk about growing up. People just put an etiquette. My next movie will be a movie about LGBTQ. Will be very important. And people just say, you have to do this, you have to do that. It's a very delicate topic. And I'm taking something on my things from this author like Stephen King to drive the story. People say, you are nuts. No, because they talk about people that are not accepted by society sometimes. And you have to know everything, or must know everything, most of the thing, to build a good story.
Well, it's got to be right. Otherwise, is it a fiction or is it not a fiction? So if I'm trying to tell a message, but the premise is wrong, well, then my message isn't going to be received.
Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone is supposed to be a show, science fiction show, but Rod Serling, Richard Matheson, Ray Bradbury, all the guys that were working on that show, they think we have to talk about society and using science fiction to tell people in which kind of world we live. So when I was teaching here, Robert Morris, every 30 minutes of my lesson, that was 3 hours, I take time to show to them a Twilight Zone episode or Alfred Hitchcock Present episode. And they were into it, understanding about discrimination, racism. And they say, well, we think it was just science fiction. And they say, no, this is talking about society.
No, in fact, it's funny you say that because everybody knows Gene Roddenberry,
yeah.
Star Trek. But I'll bet you a lot of people don't know that he wrote, one of his first things he wrote for was actually a Western called Have Gun Will Travel. And so he wrote for a Western. But if you watch the episodes, they were actually way ahead of what I'll call the social justice.
Right.
You see, the problem now is I think a lot of the social justice stories are fake. They're just more, it's cliche or it's popular. Or let's just put, a biracial. Let's put a gay person. Look at us. We're so smart. But when you were doing it 60 years ago, you were really a risk because you could lose everything to address some of these issues. But I remember Gene Roddenberry, he addressed a lot of, racial issues, right. Interracial issues. He addressed things in a black and white Western.
Yes.
And nobody would have thought to have tried that back then. But that's why that's why those names are remembered. Because it wasn't safe to do it. And they said, I'm going to do it anyways.
Right. These people change our world. And there was a lot of people that has to leave countries like, for example, the writer James Baldwin, Richard Wright. They went to France because at that time was difficult for example, African American live here. These are strong topic, but the book of dead people are still classic, you know. And sometimes people say, oh, it's just a minority literature or a horror movie, but when you have a genius behind the scene, I still stay.
And you can learn something from everyone, especially if it's good. Whether you think it applies to you, there's still a good lesson there. I would say this, though. I will say that one fear I have, and I'm curious your thoughts, is, you know, we're writing about social issues, and I'm not saying there aren't problems, but the problems are very different than they were, say, 50, 60 years ago, how people were accepted. There are always going to be bad people. But the difference now is I don't think a lot of the badness is mainstream. Now there's a lot less people doing that. So at what point do we say, well, I don't want to write about racism or religious discrimination? They happen, but it's not, say, as normal or as accepted as it would have been a long time ago. So what point do we kind of look for, if you really want to make a difference, you know, how do we identify the real current social issues without being, you know, a fad or, oh, look at me, I'm intelligent because I'm writing about this. Like, how do we really identify them, even if it's not in the majority, and say, okay, I'm going to write this to try and maybe help, even if it's just a few people, to help those few people?
I did a movie. The title is a little bit strange. That is, I Believe in One Only Father. And it's a movie about domestic violence and violence against the women. I don't have time to go, but trust me, all the world call me from the Philippines, from Brazil, from New Zealand, and they say, how do you know my story? You are telling my story. I'm a middle-class guy. I grew in a middle-class family. My father was a teacher. My mother was a teacher. And I describe a story in this movie that is on Amazon Prime. I describe a story of a grandfather that he was like a monster. True story. He molested and raped first his daughter-in-law, and then he tried to do the same with the grandchildren. This is a true story. I try to build the story in a way that it's hard, it's deep, and I try to make some hope in the movie at the end. It's not a happy end, but hope in the end. Trust me, I won award all over the world, and people call me, and I repeat, I receive letter and email say, you did my story. It was a story set in a rural area. They were shepherds, so nobody wanted to talk about that story. Because when you make a movie like good movie about violence, you always see rich people or kids, and no, there is something that nobody wants to talk about. So the reality, that the hidden reality, maybe can address that story more, like the movie that I showed today, Close to the World. The story of racism. Maybe the guy in the episode of the racism, he was the smartest guy of everyone, but he just want to work, and people make fun of him and they joke with him. So, but that was the story I want to tell. I don't want to tell a story of racism like I make an example. Bret Easton Ellis do. It's another type of story. I want to go with the people that have no voices.
Now let me ask you, because a lot of these topics don't get, in the real world, they don't get fixed in a 2-hour movie. So it becomes an awareness, and it becomes a generational repair. Like, I don't believe that all of a sudden everyone's eyes open and go, oh my God, you're right. I was wrong my entire life, and I'm going to change. I think people can get better, but I think some people, and a good example would be the grandfather that molests his daughter-in-law and tries. What's the odds or the chance that he's going to repent? He might, but he's probably not. And now the damage is generational damage, because now the daughter-in-law has to live with this memory, potentially the grandkids. So now you've broken generations. How do you give hope in a movie that has that kind of damage or other problems?
I met the family, the grandpa. It's horrible to call a grandpa a man that did that
Right.
thing, But the grandpa, it was dead already. The lady, the name is Maria, and I met her. The first 2 months, she never looked in my eyes. For the society, for the community where she lives, she was the one. She was the prostitute, was not him. At the end of the movie, after she came to the cinema to watch the movie, was the first time that she said me, "Thank you, I'm done." And she looking into my eyes, and I have goosebumps now, because I did something for that person that maybe psychologist or whatever cannot help. And there is always someone in the room that has to start to do something. And I make a deep movie. Maybe I don't save everyone, but maybe on 100 people there is a kid, a guy that could beat his girlfriend or talk bad with his father, and then it come the movie that he saw. There is always, you cannot save everyone, but there is always someone that will get the movie. And even if it's one, this is my mission, this is our mission, we have to tell story, and we cannot just make a silly comedy or stupid thing.
Or another comic book movie.
Right.
I mean, I'm just, how many times can we do comic book movies?
Right.
I mean, and that's my point. It's so empty, and they spend tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, and people watch them, and I'm thinking, what? I understand you're entertained, but it's almost like at some point it becomes a waste. I don't expect to go to the theater all the time and have to have a preaching message, but I don't know. I just feel like life is too short, and at what point do we try and get something out of these, out of our, what I'll call our entertainment? I do want to kind of go to the movies, because that is sort of your passion, though. A movies with a message, and you said it for the people that are not heard. And the movie today was funny, because one of the sub stories was the singer who couldn't be heard. So, what was the inspiration for that?
I was listening to a radio because it's funny, and maybe this is funny or maybe it's weird. I think in 3 places. On the bed, of course, before sleeping, and maybe good thoughts and bad thoughts come into your mind, and some idea. When I'm driving, I drive like crazy every here, all over the places.
You're Italian, I understand.
Yeah, in traffic. No, but in traffic you don't think. You think when you are on the road and in the restroom. Okay, quiet place.
It's the library.
Yeah. So I was hearing this story about a guy, the name is Albano, he's an Italian singer, and he was telling, I did the concert, I was not so good because I was losing my voice, but the people want that I sing, so I sing. And I say, can I build a story about a singer losing the voice, and then we discover that he didn't lose the voice. I will do spoiler. He don't lose the voice, but it's the other people that don't want to listen anymore because they are too busy on the social media, on the phone, and blah, blah, blah. And so I said, this is the story. So I was driving, and I text to my colleague and partners, and they say, we want to do this episode. It was a COVID. And they say, yes, this is wonderful. And I put a little... a guy from Senegal, he was 5 or 6, 7 years old at that time, with a funny accent because he said the R in the French way. It was funny. And they say, this guy, this little guy, will save the man. And that's it, Ideas start just out of the cloud.
I'll tell you what, it was definitely... I liked it. It was a very interesting way to look at things, and he's about to, I won't spoil it for the folks that are listening. But folks, I'll be right back because I got to pay for this. Thanks to Greater Pittsburgh Travel. For any of your travel needs, let Tom and the team at Greater Pittsburgh Travel know, and they'll take care of you. For more information, call 412-331-2244 or visit their website at www.greaterpittsburghtravel.com. For all of your plumbing needs, be sure to try Palucci Plumbing. Nick and the team have decades of experience and will get you back up and running. For more information, call Palucci Plumbing at 412-782-5050. And we want to thank the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. If you're interested in learning more, you can find their contact information on Facebook at Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. Again, thanks Domenica and the team at the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh for your support. And we want to thank La Scuola d'Italia Galileo Galilei, the only nonprofit school in Pittsburgh endorsed by the Italian Consulate. If you're interested in learning Italian or have your children being immersed in the Italian culture and language, be sure to give them a call at 412-404-7070. And that's La Scuola d'Italia Galileo Galilei. We'd also like to thank Chris Gonzalez from the Knights of Columbus. If you have any questions about joining the Knights of Columbus, reach out to Chris Gonzalez at 412-605-9074. All right, welcome back. All right, Luca. So let's talk about some recent projects. What have you just finished and what have you got going on? Because this one we just showed today, Vicino al Verbo.
Yeah,
that's not too long ago when you finished it.
Yes, I finished in December 2023, and I screened March 23, first time 2024.
So that was your most recent film.
Yeah, well, this is recent, but now it just come Friday. A documentary that I did about soccer, mental illness, and criminality. It's another story, but I won an award in Milan, so I think I will spread to the world even that documentary. But I'm working actually on a movie inspired by Charles Bukowski. So, and I did, even in that case, some different stories that build together, people that are living in the same village. And I just did the first one that is a story about an alcoholic guy, of course, Bukowski, that have an obsession with a gardener. He has an obsession he dream about the gardener. And you at the end will realize why. And then I have this movie LGBTQ that I have to do, I think, 2025 in January and February. And then I hope to have grant to do a feature film about theater that is inspired by Chekhov, the Sing of Swan. So it's about an old actor that he cannot. It will be his last night in theater.
Now, let's talk about that because you're an independent filmmaker. So how does that work? You have to set your own schedule, but sometimes the hardest boss we have is ourselves.
Yeah.
So how does that work for you as an independent filmmaker? Because this is your bread and butter. This is how you make your living.
Yes, it's not easy, and thanks to the United States, thanks to America, my resume is very big and important. So when I really want to make a living, I send my resume to some school, and they say yes, come to teach, and so I make money on that, and I'm a ghostwriter from some people, so I write books for people, and I make living, but it's not easy to produce, and now that I build my career as an independent, some people start to come to me, and they say, let's make a movie together, we want you, and the good thing that I will be an independent, and I will have a director's cut. Yeah.
Well, the nice thing, I get that. Well, the nice thing, though, I would say this, because, I've just started what I'm going to call my career, and my goal is not to be full-time film. I love it, but I think a lot of people think it's simple. Oh, you just aim a camera. There is so much work that goes into this. And especially when you're independent, when you're self-funding, or when you're partially funding. Like I was blessed. I had some funding, but it didn't cover the bills. And, if you make something, if you're lucky, you're Mel Gibson and you make $100 million. Yeah, right. But the reality is you're not Mel Gibson and we're not going to make $100 million. So it becomes a passion. And, when people are starting out, I think there's expectations. If you were going to give advice to these people, what would you tell them?
It's an hard question because I try with other people. I have an humanitarian association. I went to Africa to teach, I built something. the advice that I give, it's not always received in the right way.
Most advices.
There is not people like us that has our passion. I know that it's difficult, but I did it. I make a living like you. Ask me, but maybe they don't really want to do this work as a mission. They want to just be famous. So my first advice, this is a job, this is a passion. Don't think that you have to be famous. Do something. I'm sure that when Bob Dylan started with folk music, I don't know, in New York or whatever it was, he say, I want to tell story, I want to do this one. And look, he won the Nobel Prize. So I think you have to really believe and you have to sacrifice yourself. You know, sometime to me in the past, I was looking at my wallet and there was few money inside. But I really strongly believe that that was my way, and that's it. This is my way.
And that's what's going to come out. I mean, there's too many people. You said it. It's just like sports. When kids are young, they say, I want to be a superstar. Well, the odds are you will not be rich and famous. Doesn't mean you can't be. Yeah. But the odds are it's not going to happen. And I think if you're going to do anything, I would say it's got to be a passion. And I can see it in your work. What's next, and where can people learn more about you?
The next is that I did this documentary, Faceless, about sport. And I think, if you want, next time I will bring the documentary here.
You'll be back.
I will try to bring your documentary in Italy because it's very good.
I appreciate it.
And this is the next that we do together. And next, I want to do something with you.
Oh, I like your attitude.
And I like to be a Robert Morris because I went to several schools and university. But what I did here, I will always remember because they are still the guy that I met, Ray Zapparoni, Joe Hale. So I think we can tell and teach to this kid to be like us, be on the right page, have a mission. Sometimes you have to even understand that you could do something for free. And free bring friends, and friends bring other friends, other job, and maybe success. So I hope to come back here and work with all of you guys.
Se Dio ci vuole.
Se Dio ci vuole, esattamente.
Okay. Luca, where can they go find out about you? Where can people go follow you?
Well, they put Luca Guardabascio and will come my page, and Guardabascio 99 is my Instagram if people want to follow me. And we have an humanitarian association that is called Cinema Sociale 99. So if you put Luca Guardabascio, something with 99, I come... And
I'm going to have that down in the description so folks you can follow Luca. And obviously, you know, he's got some fantastic work out there. We had the opportunity to watch one of his films today. Loved it. Very interesting. Loved the little subplots. By the way, who was the actor that was the priest?
The priest is Fabio Mazzari. He was very famous. He did a TV show. It was a soap opera in Italy. It was big, like, I don't know, a soap opera here, like Love Boat.
Did a great job.
Did a great job, and he's a theater actor mainly, but he's great.
It was a wonderful job. No, I definitely was riveted, but especially when it started off. I said, I like him.
Fabio Mazzari.
Oh, perfect.
You can tell from the nose to the hair that is perfect. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Some people just have the look, Luca.
Yeah.
I don't have it. You'll see my film. Oh, mamma mia, I got to stick to radio. All right, folks, listen, I want to thank you all again. I want to thank Luca for being in the studio, and I want to thank you all for tuning in. And again, Luca Guardabascio, you can see his information down in the description. I want you to follow him, and I want you to check out his films. I think you're going to enjoy them a lot. And I know I did. And again, we want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for continuing to support us. I've got listeners literally from about 30 different countries, and I cannot thank you enough. People all over the world are literally listening to this podcast, and I want to say grazie, grazie, grazie. Even to the folks in Russia, Albania, Australia, Canada, the UK, Germany, we are all over the world. I cannot thank you enough. So until next time, you have a wonderful and blessed week, and you take care of yourselves.
Grazie.